And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome, everyone, to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this Sunday, November 2nd, 2025. And in the weather-related headlines across the state of Alaska, we continue to monitor the Ski Lac Lake Glacier Dammed Lake release that continues into the Kenai River. Good news about this is we're not anticipating any major flooding. Water levels are coming up on the river below Ski Lac Lake, but should stay at or below action stage. So that's even below minor flood stage as we go through early this week, reaching their crest, depending on your location, like Kenai Keys on into Soldotna and Sterling on Tuesday. Breezy conditions still continuing along the Arctic coast through this Sunday night and early Monday. It's been quite windy up there past day or so. And then a couple of low pressures. We have one low pressure crossing the Aleutians today on Sunday, and another one that'll be crossing the central eastern Aleutians on Tuesday. Not major storms, but they will have some gusty winds and some precipitation with them. And then there's going to be a couple of moist low pressure systems lift out of the North Pacific into the Gulf mid to late week. These will have more in the way of some precipitation and gusty winds. Could even get some accumulating snows pulled back into inland areas of south central Alaska, including maybe around Anchorage up to the Bantsu Valley. Not a definite yet, but something we'll be watching. And then the full beaver moon of November occurs early Wednesday morning, November 5th. So way up there at Dead Horse, breezy, some blowing snow, light flurries this Sunday afternoon, and temperature at 23 degrees. Gamble, also still breezy conditions there with a little bit of light snow and some low cloudiness. Winds, though, are coming down along the west coast through the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island compared to what they have been the past few days. Temperature there at 25. And then further down along the line, also there have been some gusty winds the past several days through the Alaska Peninsula, but Cold Bay is seeing lighter winds and some breaks in the clouds, so partly sunny. Mid-afternoon on this Sunday, 37 degrees. And then I took another image here from Cake in the Panhandle. Just really love the lighting. You got that low angle lighting this time of year and the way it illuminates the houses on the town. Partly sunny, 41 degrees, a little bit of a break from the showers. There's still a few lingering showers there, areas of the Panhandle, but not like the wind and rain that had occurred with some of the systems the past week. So the only area of concern is the special hydrologic statement, and this has to do with the glacier dam release on the Ski Lac Lake. So taking a look at this, this empties into Ski Lac Lake, and then the water gets pushed out there down the Kenai River. And so below Ski Lac Lake, places like Kenai Keys down towards Sterling and Soldotna, water levels are going to be coming up. And we do expect the crest to occur here around Tuesday. Kenai Keys to Sterling there in the morning hours, and then further down towards Soldotna later in the day, probably mid to late afternoon. And it could reach perhaps a few areas near Sterling could get up into the action stage. This is the minor flood stage, so we're not anticipating any notable flooding with this event, so that's good. And it's past the main fishing season too. Still a few people out getting some late season fishing in, but for all that matter, we're watching this low here in the western Gulf that continues to weaken. We still have a scattering of showers. Even a flash of lightning, rumble of thunder could accompany some of these out over the eastern, southeastern Gulf and west there of Haida Gwaii. But looking off to the west, here's another area of low pressure that's working its way across the Aleutians. Further north, the winds that were very brisk here along the Bering Strait, west side of the state, have come down compared to what they were back on, say, Thursday into Friday and Saturday. Still some stronger easterly winds along the Arctic coast, the Beaufort Sea coast, down here along the Chukchi Sea coast. Those winds will begin to come down here on Monday, not quite as breezy. And putting the map in motion, the low that's here over is just going to push kind of inland into the Kenai and up toward the Alaska Range and wash out. Then we'll be watching other energy coming up out of the North Pacific here for mid and late week in the week ahead. And then another low coming down out of the Bering and across the central eastern Aleutians by Tuesday. So late this Sunday night and a Monday morning, still a weak lingering trough along the Gulf Coast. Keep a few showers going there. Mountain areas, a few snow showers. And then back to the south and west. This is the low pressure that'll have pushed through the Aleutians today. And then back to the north, we do have a weak low up in the Chukchi Sea, just north of the Bering Strait, with a trough down along the southwest coast, kind of helping to keep the winds lighter in that area. And for Monday afternoon, still a few showers linger along the Gulf, but improving conditions for the inner channels here of the Panhandle, much of the eastern interior, central interior. And with this is the first little trough that's going to try to rotate up in the Gulf before a more notable low lifts northward. Here comes the next low. Monday afternoon, it'll be heading southeastward and crossing the Aleutians on Tuesday. So by Tuesday afternoon, approaching the central eastern Aleutians from the northwest will be this low, not especially deep, but it will have some gusty winds and some precipitation with it. Meanwhile, we still have weak low pressure and a trough lagging here through the Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait to just outside of Norton Sound in the lower Yukon coast. Here comes the next low that's going to pull back to the north and west into the western Gulf. And this system is going to have a fair amount of moisture and breezy conditions with it. It'll initially try to spread some more rain up in through coastal, at sea level here through the Panhandle starting on Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday night. And as that moisture focuses here in the western Gulf and pushes inland on the Kenai, it's possible some of that will be in the form of snow, certainly in the mountains, and maybe even some of that could reach, we'll keep an eye on the Anchorage Bowl area because could possibly produce some accumulating snow with that system. And meanwhile, high pressure remains here in northwest Canada. That'll be a feature that holds into Wednesday. For Wednesday, here comes that low up out in the North Pacific approaching the Gulf with an occluded front extending east from it into Vancouver Island and Washington, Oregon coast. Still weak trough of low pressure up along the northwest coast, few light snow showers with it. Weak high pressure over eastern Russia, and then a couple of other lows coming in off of the Kamchatka Peninsula. And the most active weather, at least later this week, Wednesday through Friday, will likely be in and along the Gulf Coast. So in the meantime, temperatures are seasonably cold, not especially cold, but not warm by any means. But I would say probably certainly a bit above normal. Lows in the teens, like along the Alcan border, Eagle, Northway, on up through the Brooks Range. And we're looking at otherwise lows most everywhere else across a good part of the mainland below freezing, with the exception of along the Gulf Coast and then in through the Panhandle. Temperatures there still that 35 to 40 degree range for lows. Temperatures on Monday afternoon will be in the 40s in the Panhandle. Also along the Gulf Coast, Middleton Island 44, almost 40 at Homer, 40-ish at Kodiak City. The interior, especially north of the Alaska Range, highs generally in the 20s through the Kuskokwim, Yukon valleys. Teens up here along the Brooks Range into the North Slope, 28 over to Savunga, 37 St. Paul, lower 40s, 41, 42 there at Dutch Harbor. And then for Tuesday morning, lows maybe near or a bit below freezing, Juneau, Skagway, Haines, on over toward Yakutat. We have some single digits showing up here, Upper Tanana Valley, Arctic Village, 7 above. So definitely a bit chillier here across the mainland, especially along and north of the Alaska Range. And temperatures Tuesday afternoon. In order to find some 40s, you got to be down here in the southwest southern part of the Panhandle, Sitka, down through Craig, Klawak and Metlakatla, looking at highs right around 47, maybe 48 degrees. Still a little above freezing, Anchorage down through the Kenai Peninsula, around Cordova, Valdez. But again, temperatures are going to stay below freezing with highs only in the 20s across much of the interior, extending along the west coast. And we're looking at highs extending out the Alaska Peninsula near or just above 40 degrees, say from False Pass, Cold Bay down through the eastern Aleutians. And the temperature outlook then for November 8th through the 12th, no really strong anomaly toward above normal temperatures, a little above normal here in the southeast over the Panhandle, and a bit cooler than normal over the west side of the state. All that's kind of signaling is still the prevailing storm track is low pressure energy and moisture coming into the Gulf. And when you have this circulation, it tends to cause southeast Alaska to be a bit milder, and it turns the west side of the state cooler down across the Alaska Peninsula because you have a northerly component to the wind flow at the surface, so that tends to keep things cooler along the west coast and Alaska Peninsula. Now, whereas it comes to precipitation, potential for a bit above normal precipitation across much of the mainland, centered though on the southeast mainland from the Kenai Peninsula, Alaska, areas surrounding Prince William Sound up into the Copper River Basin, south slopes of the central eastern Alaska range, and we also have the potential for a bit above normal precipitation here through the Panhandle. But of note, this could mean some accumulating snow, possibly here, especially Copper River Basin, eastern central Alaska range, maybe lower Mat-Su Valley. So kind of stay tuned to forecast as we come up here past the first full week of November. Pretty typical. We would expect to start to see some measurable snow, maybe even a first notable snowfall, and that could very well occur if we can just get the right threading of moisture to come in with one of these Gulf lows and fronts. So again, stay tuned to later outlooks.